Holy Jesus. What is that?
It's time to get in the game.
Do you know what time it is?
Tune in to Primetime Sports Talk with Jalen Gillis.
To me, you are nothing.
Your go-to source for breaking sports news in Central Texas and exclusive Dallas Cowboys coverage.
Start it up, let's go.
Catch us Monday through Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. on the Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Centex Prime Time here on this hump day, Wednesday afternoon. A little bit rainy here today in Central Texas, but still a great day. Want to thank everybody for joining in with us today. I'm your host, Jalen Gillis, here to take you through the primetime topics in sports, not just in the Central Texas area, but from all around the nation. Want to thank everybody for joining in with us today and all week long. Yesterday we had MCC basketball on in place of the show Centex Primetime. Monday we had PJ on and we talked about some NFL news. We talked about obviously the college sports news, and we've got even more to talk about with that as the college football playoff rankings came out last night. So plenty to talk about there today, folks. We got a full show. Want to thank everybody for joining in. As always, make sure you go over to YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on Centex Sports Network /Centex Sports TV. You can go on there and watch this content 5 to 7 p.m. weekdays right here on YouTube. Or you can listen on Infinity Sports Radio Central Texas on the app. You can download the app on your mobile device, Centex Sports 1 on your mobile device. Download the app. You'll be able to listen to this content 5 to 7 p.m. on weekdays. Well, folks, like I said, college football playoff rankings came out yesterday. NFL Week 13 fully wrapped up, heading into Week 14 now. The NBA season is a couple of months in now, about a month and some change in to the season. Starting to see some teams play some good basketball. We got college basketball going. As I just said, MCC's basketball team was on the radio yesterday in place of Centex Primetime. The women's team was on their number 10 in the nation now after another 8-0 start. Coach Thomas off to another great start in her season out there at MCC, doing a really good job with that team over at McLennan. Joining me in studio today, we've got the Waco ISD Hall of Famer, Texas Tech alumni, Mr. Wayne Walker. Wayne, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Good evening.
Well, like I said, folks, we got plenty to talk about today. We're going to talk about a little bit of NBA later. We'll talk some NFL. It is Wednesday, so I'm going to give out my NFL top 5 list that I do week in and week out. We'll preview some of the games for this weekend, and we'll talk about the conference championship games that are coming up this weekend in college football as college football regular season wrapped up. Now we're pretty much into the postseason now with the conference games starting, and we got to start with the college football playoff rankings that came out last night. So they put out their official list, top 12 teams, the second to last list before the absolute final list, which will come out next Tuesday after the conference championship games. So this list is pretty much set in stone outside of some people losing in their conference championship games. We got Oregon at number 1, been number 1 pretty much all season after Texas lost to Georgia. Oregon's been number 1 ever since. Texas at number 2. 11-1. Me and PJ got to go down to College Station on Saturday and watch some of that game on Texas A&M's campus, and it was a really good game. Got a chance to see a lot of mad and upset A&M fans, so it ended up being pretty good. Number 3, we got Penn State coming in at 11-1. They're in the conference championship game against Oregon. Notre Dame has slid up to number 4. They've kind of just rose in the ranks week after week after week. They go all the way up to number 4 now, securing since they don't have a conference championship game to play, they've secured a bye week in the college football playoffs because the first 4 teams in the college football playoffs will get a bye week to start the playoffs. Number 5, team that's had an up and down season. A lot of people didn't know where to rank them. The Georgia Bulldogs coming in at number 5, 10-2 on the season. Won a super thriller last weekend against Georgia Tech, 8 overtime game in that game. At number 6, the team that everybody's had something to say about as of late, especially after losing at home to your biggest rival and possibly the biggest rivalry in college football right now. That's Ohio State. dropped down 4 spots all the way to number 6, 10-2 on the season, out of the Big Ten championship game. So they'll probably stay just about where they're at. Tennessee, 10-2. Tennessee is at number 7. They've had a really good year, up and down as well, just like everybody else in the SEC. They've been ranked low. They were ranked right outside the college football playoffs. They won some games. They moved up in the college football playoffs. Now all the way sitting at number 7, even though they're not in the conference championship game, sitting right outside of it, led by their freshman quarterback as well. At number 8, a team we've enjoyed watching me and Wayne have talked about all year long, the SMU Mustangs, 11-1, moved up to all the way up to number 8 now in the ACC championship game, being led by the quarterback and at this point a Dallas, Texas legend already in Kevin Jennings, after winning state, going last year, winning their conference championship game in his first start in college, and then this year leading them to an 11-1 record and on a verge of winning another conference championship game in a whole separate conference. At number 9, Indiana Hoosiers, probably the biggest surprise of the year. Nobody expected Indiana to be good at all, and we definitely didn't expect Indiana to be in the college football playoffs where they're at right now at number 9, 11-1 season. Boise State coming in at number 10. They're outside of the Power Four, but they feel like they've had a good enough season for them to move into the college football playoffs after being 11-1. I think they play UNLV, who's ranked number 20 in the Mountain West Conference Championship game this weekend. And at 11-12 is where the controversy really starts. At number 11, you've got the Alabama Crimson Tide, sitting at 9-3 after losing 3 games this season, after losing to a Vanderbilt team that no one expected them to lose to, after losing to an Oklahoma team who honestly hadn't done anything this year, and they held them to 3 points. I heard somebody on TV today say I don't think they've held, or Oklahoma's held anybody to 3 points since Barry Switzer was the coach at Oklahoma, and that might be true. They had Alabama to 3 points, but Alabama, as of right now, still in the college football playoffs, and at number 12, which we know is going to move out because, we don't know if they're going to move out, but we suspect they're going to move out because they got to put a Big 12 winner in there for the automatic bid, and there's only 12 spots. So the 12th spot is up in the air, but right now it's the Miami Hurricanes, sitting at 10-2, dropped all the way down 6 spots. They're definitely on full display this time when we see how they rank and move around certain teams, especially when you think about a 9-3 Alabama team, and there's no other 3-loss teams in the college football playoffs. So what are your thoughts about this list as of right now?
Well, my thoughts is it's kind of what we expected. Going into last weekend, we had a lot of rivalry games, and some teams played themselves out.
Yeah.
Some teams played themselves in. Alabama is probably, like you say, the most controversial pick that's in this ranking, and like you say, I suspect that they will fall out after this conference championship. After conference championship weekend. But you can make a case for a lot of teams that have 3 losses.
All in the SEC too,
in the
at least
SEC.
most of them.
And if I was to pick a team that has 3 losses, I'm going with South Carolina because they're the hottest team at this point. They're playing the best football. Their defense is playing outstanding. Offense at quarterback, they got a playmaker.
Yeah.
You could just make a case for a lot of teams that could be in that position, but I don't think it will stay. I don't think it will stand. I think what will happen is that, like you said, Arizona State will be in there somewhere, or whoever wins, or Iowa State, one or the other. So I as far as rankings, I mean, Boise State, I don't think Boise State has played anyone either. I don't. It's just my opinion. Even Notre Dame, I think they should be in, but I don't think they should be as high. So I have a few issues with how they rank them, but for the most part, I think they kind of got it right, except for the Alabama.
Yeah, the Alabama one is pretty much they're saying they're going to have to pick between Alabama and Miami. Both of them sitting at 11-12. They're the first people out when somebody's got to move in with an Iowa State or Arizona State. And I'm in agreement with you. I thought South Carolina should get that bid over both of them. I feel like South Carolina's got good wins, and they also have better losses than them. Alabama's got a loss to Vanderbilt and to Oklahoma, who are sitting at the bottom of the SEC. South Carolina's got losses to most of these teams that are at the top of the SEC in there. So I think they even got better losses, and I'm agreeing with the Notre Dame point as well. Notre Dame is 11-1. They're not in the conference. I think you got to give if SMU goes out here and wins against Clemson and is 8, you got to give SMU that spot, because I understand they're like, okay, we're gonna put, because after Notre Dame at 4, all the rest of those teams are 10-2 that are right behind them, like Ohio State, Tennessee. So Notre Dame has more and more win than them. Well, SMU is also 11-1, just like Notre Dame, and if they if they win an ACC championship, they'll have 12 wins. I think you got to give SMU that bye because they've earned it. They went out there and won all their games in conference. They went undefeated in conference, and if they win the conference championship to top it off, I mean, I think you got to. I understand SMU's not the sexy name that maybe a Notre Dame is, all that kind of stuff. But man, I mean, they've gone out here and earned it this year.
Well, I was looking at a projected bracket, and the teams that had buys in this projected bracket were Oregon 1, Texas 2, SMU 3, and Boise State 4. And that's the projected bracket that if everything stays the same, then that's the projected bracket.
If Boise State gets a bye, I mean
exactly. I mean,
that'll set off a lot of people.
It's gonna set off a lot of people. I mean, some conferences are not.
The Mountain West
the same caliber as others.
I understand we don't have a Pac-12 anymore, but I don't think you can elevate the Mountain West to being where that Pac-12 is without those teams being there.
I mean,
to go with it.
Week in, week out. If you're in the SEC, you're in the Big Ten. You pretty much playing someone, and I think the Big Ten. Let me change my perspective on that, because the Big Ten, they kind of watered it down when they started adding so many teams, and they still had the ruckuses, and they still have the Michigan State, they still have Minnesota and Iowa, and I think they're kind of watered down per se, but for the most part, the Nebraskas, they got all these teams in here that's kind of watered down. But in the SEC, I mean, you got to play.
Yeah.
In the Big 12, you have to play because there's so much parity in these teams, and the Big 12 hurt itself because it added so many teams, and now you have a lot of teams. I mean, even like a Baylor team that's probably been playing is just as good as anybody in the nation over these last 5-6 weeks, and that's just like South Carolina. So everybody can make a play. I mean, I just don't see a Boise State getting a bye. I can see SMU because of their record and who they lost to. But anybody outside of Oregon and Texas, you're going to have a controversy on whoever gets that bye.
And then with Texas going out there, and they're 11-1 right now, but what if they lose to Georgia again for the second time in the SEC championship? Do you give Georgia the spot on the bye? Do you give it to Texas on the bye? So it's tough.
And then Penn State and Oregon.
Same with them. Same with them.
You beat them twice, right? So what happens? Clemson lost to South Carolina, and I think South Carolina, like I said, Clemson was a ranked team.
Yeah.
Ranked a little bit higher than they were. If they win, then you're talking about them being in. But like I say, some teams played themselves out of this bracket, and some teams played themselves in. And I thought South Carolina definitely was a team that played themselves in by beating a ranked Clemson team and playing better than anybody in the country over the last 5 weeks, per se.
Yeah, they played as good as any team in the country has played the last 5 or 6 weeks, led by a freshman quarterback, too, at that. South Carolina, like you said, I think they should get it. And a lot of teams did play themselves out, and I think 2 of those teams that played themselves out are the 11 and 12 team, is Alabama and Miami. I feel like both of those teams
I don't
played each other out.
I don't want to see either one of those teams.
Alabama hasn't gone out here and earned it. At this point, they're hanging on to the name as hard as you can hang on to a name with them coming in at 9-3, putting them in that position. Because, like you said, if you're going to go with a 9-3 team, South Carolina's been hot. Alabama's just coming off a loss to Oklahoma. They're coming off a loss to, I think, a team that's 14th out of 16 teams in the SEC.
Right.
So they're at the bottom of the SEC.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt is right above Oklahoma, near that bottom of the SEC. And those are two of your losses if you're an Alabama squad.
And all losses are not judged the same. I mean, now if South Carolina loses to Oklahoma, then you gotta, then you talk about it, but there's nothing to talk about in regards to that because South Carolina lost to Georgia.
Yeah.
They lost to the prime and primary teams and the premier teams in the Southeast Conference. And then you talk about Miami. Mm-hmm. Miami, they got lucky about 3 times this whole year and won some games that they probably should have lost.
Yeah. Easily could have 4 to 5 losses on this season.
Yeah.
So Miami, I don't want to see that in there, and I think they've got them at 12th because they're kind of waiting to have them be the ones to push out, and a lot of people are debating. Well, Miami's got they're 10-2, and Alabama's 9-3, and I seen a stat earlier. Alabama 3-1 against current top 25 teams. Miami is 0-1 against top 25 teams currently. Alabama 6-1 against teams that are above 500. Miami is 4-2. So Alabama does have the better resume, which we all knew that, especially playing in the SEC. They obviously have the better resume because they do have some bad losses, but they've got good wins in there too, like beating a Georgia team. So they've got good wins in there as well. So if it's between those two, obviously Alabama should be in it, but I wouldn't be upset if both of those teams dropped out and they decided to move somebody else up because, I mean, what if Clemson goes out here and beats SMU? What do you do with Clemson? They're sitting at 9-3, but they'll have a conference championship to go in there. So then you would have to move them up. They would get the automatic bid, but then what would you do with SMU, who would just be 11-2, with their 2 losses being to a conference champion in Clemson and a team that won their first 9 games of the season in BYU.
So it's still a lot to be determined,
Man,
Jalen.
a lot.
I mean, because you had these scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's the same scenarios you had coming into last weekend. Like when we came on there and we was like, hey, man, when you come to rivalry games, anything can happen. Anything can happen. You just don't know because you take off the gloves.
Yeah.
I mean, and you go to the same churches. You come from the same high schools. You run in the same circles. And once you do that, I mean, anything can go. You friends with these guys.
Yeah.
So it's all about bragging rights.
Yeah.
And these schools have rich traditions and history against each other that goes back in the late 1900s, in the early 1900s. So, man, I mean, so a lot of teams played themselves out and a lot of teams played themselves in with these rivalry games.
Yeah, I mean, the rivalry game showed up in a huge way. Obviously, the one being most affected, Ohio State, because they were a shoe-in pretty much for not only the Big Ten championship, which I thought they had a decent chance of maybe getting some get back on Oregon if they got to that and were played on a neutral field in Indianapolis. But they're out of the conference championship, and they were going to be a shoe-in for a top 4 seed as well. I think even maybe with the loss, because outside of that, everybody else would be 10-2 as well. So, I mean, that Michigan game really came back to affect them. I don't know what the future is for head coach Ryan Day. I heard Chris Carter, NFL Hall of Famer and former Ohio State alumni, he said he's got to get to a national championship in order for his job to be secure, because you go out here and now lose to Michigan for 4 years in a row, except for this time you lose to Michigan without Jim Harbaugh. The big bad wolf's not over there anymore, and you still go out there and lose.
And the thing about that is they brought in the best transfers out of the portal in the whole country at the tune of over, they say, about $50 million.
Man.
I mean, and this is for college, you know. I mean, so you look at it in that perspective. You look at it as you were favored. You look at it as you were at home. You look at it as what's your record been in the last 5 to 6 meetings, you know. You look at all of that. You look at all of those things as a coach, you just can't get over that hump. And regardless of what your regular season record is, when you're at Michigan or Ohio State, you have to beat.
Man.
If you're at Michigan, you have to beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
If you're at Ohio State, you have to beat Michigan. That's what you're judged on, because it is a rivalry.
Yeah.
It's just like the Texas A&M game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no one that hates each other more than Texas A&M and Texas.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you went down there, you seen that atmosphere, you seen all the hype, and it's nothing bigger than that.
No.
And Texas A&M played their stuff out by losing. You at home, you know, it's a big game. You got everything on the line. Texas would have still got in, even if Texas A&M would have beat them, but Texas wasn't going out like that.
Yeah.
Went out and played. I thought they had the best roster, and they ended up winning. So, yes, these rivalry games, man, are tough. And like you said, Michigan,
Ohio State,
Ohio State, man, Ohio State just is. I mean, I don't know what to say. They played themselves into a bad position because they were one of the teams that probably would have got a bye.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're probably going to get in, but once they get in, what's going to happen? You know, now they're going to be playing the first week instead of sitting out a week and preparing for the team that's going to play the previous week.
Yeah, and there's going to be sitting right at around that middle of the pack as far as teams right outside the box. So you're going to have to play somebody tough. You're not going to get that 12 seed. You're not going to get that 11 seed. You're going to have to come out and play in the first round and really go out there and earn it. And like you said, if you play for Michigan, you got one job, and that's to beat Ohio State. If you coach for Ohio State, you got one job, and that's to beat Michigan. They both have posters in each one of their locker rooms that stay up year round that says to beat Ohio State or beat Michigan within the opposing locker rooms. And Sharon Moore is somebody who had question marks around his coaching job after Michigan's coming off a national championship, and you go out there at that point, they had 6 wins. They were just barely bowl eligible, sitting at 6-5, but he's probably reassured his coaching, his coaching status after beating an Ohio State team out there. For Ohio State, I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Ryan Day. I feel like he always folds in these big moment games. But after losing to this Michigan team with probably the worst quarterback play in the nation, I mean, even in this game that they lost in, their quarterback had 60 yards. Like they had the worst QB play in the nation. They just lost their coach, who's probably going to end up being an NCAA Hall of Famer or close to with the amount of wins that he had, and then cementing his legacy by winning the national championship. And Jim Harbaugh, they lose him. They lose players in the transfer portal. They don't have a quarterback. They go 6-5 on the season, and you lose to that team. I mean, it's some real question marks around Ryan Day.
Brian Kelly in as offense coordinator.
Yeah, Chip Kelly. Yeah,
Chip Kelly. You bring him in. You go and get the guy from Kansas State to be your quarterback.
Yep.
You go get the best defensive back in the country. Go get one of the best wide receivers in the country. They got all of these kids out of the transfer portal, and they got this hot shot offense coordinator. I mean, and this guy's the highest paid offense coordinator in the country.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get it done. You couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And you got the responsibility goes on Ryan Day because he's the one hiring these guys. He's the one winning, and he puts in the game plan and he oversees it. But man, they offense was in it was out of there. They couldn't do anything against Michigan.
10 points. You score at home.
At home.
And in your biggest rivalry game of the year. Your whole season leads up to a point like this, especially if it's the game before the conference championship games. Your whole season is leading up to peak at this point, and you go out there and score 10 points. They got to look at everybody a little different. I know I'm looking at everybody different on Ohio State. I haven't been sold on Will Howard all year long, but this just solidified it in my brain, at least, on me not being sold on Will Howard at the QB position for Ohio State, because you just named all those guys. They're too talented. You just said they got a NFL-like payroll out there, $50 million payroll. They've got the most talent on both sides of the ball. It's All-Americans on both sides of the ball, littered everywhere. And you come out there and you can't find a way to get this one done. I'm looking at Ohio State differently going into this playoffs. Maybe they can beat if they match up with a Boise State or somebody like that, or maybe you'll get another crack at Indiana or something, and you'll get them. But
they have to win it all.
Yeah,
they have to win it.
Oh yeah, for him for sure.
To keep his job, they have to win it all.
Yeah.
I don't even think getting to the national championship game is going to be good enough But I think he has to win it all to keep his job, to retain his job.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Before we go on the break, I want to ask you about the other game that we were just kind of talking about, the Texas and Texas A&M game. Obviously, Texas wins this one, and the score looked closer than what it was, but it was really a dominant performance by Texas, especially their defense. They win 17-7 in the game, going on the road down to Kyle Field and getting a win like that. A&M, like you said, they played themselves out of this game. Out of a playoff berth and out of really a SEC championship berth, because they could have went to that as well. They lose this game without scoring a point on offense. The offense didn't score a point. The only touchdown they had was a pick six by Ewers. So what was your opinion on the game, and then what's your opinion on Texas after seeing them handle Texas A&M like this?
Well, a dominant performance by Texas, especially their defense.
Yeah.
Their offense did enough, to win the game. Ewers with his arm pretty much made some good runs as well. But I think the difference was, man, it was some timely plays that just cost A&M in the end, like offsides or a penalty coming in, or one time Ewers throws the ball in the back of the end zone, man, and the degree of difficulty for this guy to catch this ball. Defensive player right there. Just some timely stuff that happened with A&M that they couldn't put it together, and their offense was non-existent. In this game. You got to come in with a better game plan, because when you play Texas, they're dominant on the defensive end. Their front seven is dominant.
Oh man.
Their front five, I must say, but the linebackers in that defensive line, you have to be able to attack them in some other kind of way, and they weren't able to do that.
Yeah.
And when you have a running quarterback, and the game plan was to keep the quarterback in the pocket. They rushed out wide, kept him in the pocket where he wasn't able to get out and be effective. And that was a great game plan by Texas, but you have to have some way to counter that if you Texas A&M, so you can basically score some points, and they weren't able to score any points.
Yeah,
the hype was there, but the game wasn't there. It just wasn't there. It was dominated by Texas.
I was honestly expecting a better game than what the effort that A&M put up. Like you said, I think Texas did a great job defensively of game planning, and I think A&M did a poor job of game planning on the offensive end. I think their defensive game plan was okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, guys made big catches. Shout out to the former Conley cadet. He had 180 yards in the game rushing the ball, and Trey Wiseman. So, you force them into running the ball and don't let their weapons on the outside do what they're going to do. But on offense, the game plan was just mediocre in my opinion. They didn't try to stretch the field really at all. They've got 4 and 5 stars at just about every position at A&M still, even with them being that. And the way that they've ended their season is going to make people look at their coach a little bit differently going into this offseason, because at one point, not even too long ago, they were the number 1 team in the SEC. Top 10 team in the nation, and they're going to finish their season now not even ranked in the top 25. So after losing to Auburn and then backdoor and losing to Texas and stuff like that. So A&M, I'm not sure where they're going from there. Mike Elko is definitely going to have some questions to answer in the offseason with the way that they ended their season, because they started out great. Even though they lost to Notre Dame. But after that game, man, they ran off about 7 or 8 in a row and really put themselves in chance for contention in the SEC and in this national championship race. But ending the season not even ranked in the top 25 is a bad look for Mike Elko. Ending the season.
And Jalen, this is his first year, so he's going to get a pass. But like you say, he's going to have to answer for some things, like a game that you should have won against Auburn.
For sure.
You set yourself back on that game, looking forward to the Texas game. But the thing is, as a coach, you get your team prepared to play every week, and you talk to your team and tell them, hey, we can't look past this game. We have to go out here and take care of business this week. And us thinking that it's a rivalry game, that they would come out and they would do and play better against Texas, it just didn't happen. The game, the hype wasn't worth the game. The game, it wasn't there. It wasn't there for me. And I looked at the whole game.
Yeah.
You look forward to looking to the game, and it just wasn't there.
No, it wasn't. The hype was definitely way greater than the game actually was because I even left the game with some question marks about Quinn Ewers. He showed some really good throws in that game and showed some really good signs, but still just made some mistakes that you playing a team that ain't A&M. That's the stuff that's going to cost you a game. That'll cost you in this college football playoffs or in this SEC championship game. You know, the pick six and to the guy, I mean, you can't do those. You're way better off just taking the sack and kicking the field goal. But you're trying to force a play there towards the end. Right. You end up there could have been a critical error if A&M had any type of offense.
If they had any type of offense. And like you say, the thing for them to do was keep getting it to Wisner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, happy for that young man.
Yeah.
Played a heck of a game, man. A bell cow.
Yeah.
Just waited for his opportunity, waited for some guys to go down. And when you get in and you get to play, you make the best of it.
Yeah.
And I don't see them guys getting the jobs back, to be honest with you. I feel like he's a part of their game plan now. Mm-hmm. He's a part of what they're gonna do because he's just consistent. He's gonna run, he's gonna run hard, and he's gonna get you some extra yards every time he carries the ball. So happy for that young man, especially being from the Central Texas area.
Yeah.
And good luck to him the rest of the way. But I think that was their best part of their game plan as far as the University of Texas is handing him off the ball and him getting 4 and 5 yards every time he gets it. So
I think that was the best thing they could do was run. I mean, it's kind of like what they've been saying all year, run the football. Sometimes Steve Sarkisian's gotten a little bit too cute. You know, some of the reverse plays, some of the tight end screens, and some of these other things. Hey, man, sometimes it's just run the football. And they did in this game. They knew that's what they needed to do to win. He had 33 carries in that game, so was able to carry them to a victory. Folks, we got to go to a quick break. When we come back, got to talk about these conference championship games this weekend. Also got NFL news we got to talk about, some NBA news as well that we need to hit before we get off the show. And we'll talk a little bit about Week 14 in the NFL coming up. So stay tuned and stay locked in right here on Centex Primetime. We'll be right back after this.
Central Texas home for sports. It's Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports. Catch all your in-depth sports analysis with the best. The hottest sports show in the evening is Centex Primetime, hosted by Jalen Gillis.
Act like y'all know.
Weekdays 5 to 7. This is the Central Texas #1 leader in sports. Centex Sports Network.
That's right, sports fans. We can talk about sports.
And Infinity Sports.
Lighthouse Streaming, a full-scale media agency and your go-to source for all things audio and video. Is your church long overdue for audio and video upgrades? Call Lighthouse Streaming for a free consultation. Does your corporate or church event need audio or video production? Don't stress. Call the guys at Lighthouse Streaming. In business since 2017, Lighthouse Streaming has produced hundreds of live events and completed dozens of church and venue installations. Whatever your AV needs are, Lighthouse Streaming has you covered. Give them a call at 254-252-4206. That's 254-252-4206. Or go to lighthousestreaming.com and set up your free consultation.
Are you looking for something new and unforgettable in Waco? Come to the Blasian Asian, where authentic Cambodian flavors meet creative culinary flair. Voted People's Choice as Waco's #1 Asian restaurant since 2019 by both the Wacoan Magazine and the Waco Tribune Herald. Located inside the popular Union Hall on 8th and Franklin, we're serving up family recipes with a twist. Blasian Asian egg rolls are rolled fresh daily, and their sauces or marinades are made in-house with love. Stop by today. Located inside the popular Union Hall on 8th and Franklin. And for Baylor students, enjoy 10% off with your student ID.
The East Waco Empowerment Project, along with City Center Waco, is hosting WeBo, Workshop in Business Opportunity, to help create more entrepreneurs. Business owners like Aniceto Charles of True Jamaica Restaurant and Carla Dotson of Boardwalk on Elm attended WeBo to develop their business ideas into successful Black-owned businesses right in the heart of East Waco. WeBo can also help you turn your side hustle or business idea into the next thriving Black-owned business in our community. If you would like to attend this 10-week intense entrepreneurial workshop, go to WeBoWaco.org. That's WIBO Waco.org.
Central Texas home for sports. It's Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports. Catch all your in-depth sports analysis with the best. The hottest sports show in the evening is Centex Primetime, hosted by Jalen Gillis.
Act like y'all.
Weekdays 5 to 7. This is the Central Texas #1 leader in sports. Centex Sports Network.
That's right, sports fans. We can talk about sports.
And Infinity Sports. This is live from the Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports Studios.
That's right, sports fans.
About to show these boys how we do it. You ready?
Tune in to Primetime Sports Talk with Jalen Gillis, your go-to source for breaking sports news in Central Texas and exclusive Dallas Cowboys coverage on the Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Centex Prime Time. Still here in hour number 1. Joined in the studio by Wayne Walker. We are just getting done talking about this college football playoff rankings that just came out yesterday. They put a few new teams in the top 12, and then even on the outside of the top 12, a couple teams that weren't even ranked last week got to jump up in the rankings, like Syracuse after getting a big win over Miami, kind of almost ruining their season. We'll see how they decide to do with those teams or with Miami. But Army jumped up back into the rankings at number 24. They're 10-1, and they're actually playing in the American Conference Championship game, playing against the other team that moved up to 25 in Memphis. I think it's their first time being ranked all year. They're at 10-2. So a few different teams got an opportunity to jump up into that top 25 as well. But this weekend, folks, is Conference Championship weekend, and I'll talk about these Power 4 schools here first, and starting with the Big 12 and seeing their game. They've got the first game of the day starting at 11 o'clock, Iowa State versus Arizona State for the Big 12 championship. The winner gets an automatic bid into the top 12, and Big 12, the only Power 4 conference that doesn't have any teams ranked in the top 12. They've got both of these teams ranked right outside at 15 and 16 with Iowa State and Arizona. I think Colorado, if they could have won their game against Kansas, would have been the only team to have an opportunity, in my opinion, to jump up into that top 12 maybe. But with them losing out, and then Iowa State and Arizona State both picking up their 2 losses in conference play, it kind of moved them backwards. But the winner of this game is going to get an automatic bid going into the season. Right now, Arizona State, 2-point favorite in this game over Iowa State, who was one of the favorites to win the Big 12 before the season even started. And they're right there in the Big 12 championship game. They started off hot, I think 9-0, ended up going 1-2 in their last 3 games, but they still found their way into the conference championship game in this one. I kind of like Arizona State in this game. I've liked the way that they've played football the last couple of weeks, and Iowa State did get a big win against Kansas State this weekend, but they struggled against Kansas and lost that super close game to Tech as well down the stretch. And Arizona State is a team that lost early, and they're kind of similar to Baylor, who ended up finishing 5th in the Big 12, which is a huge accomplishment, especially seeing where they were at last year and even where they were at the beginning of this year. But Arizona State kind of like that too. They had to run off a lot of games. They're on a winning streak coming in to this game, as opposed to some of the other teams coming into their conference championship game. Arizona State's won 5 in a row, and I expect them to pick up their 6th win here, led by their running back, Scatterbo, I think is how you say his name. He runs the ball hard. He just ran all over Arizona last weekend. He's got 1,400 yards this year, 17 touchdowns as well. Wayne, what's your opinion on the Big 12 championship game?
Well, I'm with you on this one. I think Arizona State has been playing better than anybody in the Big 12. In momentum, they got this thing called Mo.
Yeah.
You know, and when you have momentum and you start playing well as a team, and you know it all comes together, you know, and you know what your weaknesses are, you know what your strengths are, you know how to play together. Man, that's big when you're playing football.
Yeah,
because it's all about the chemistry that you have with the other guys, and I think they had that chemistry to get it done. Iowa State on the other end, like I say, they started off hot, then they started struggling, you know. But I think Arizona State is right now is a better football team, and like I say, they got momentum on their side, and they've been playing better than anybody in the country. And nobody expected for them to be here. Everybody was talking about BYU, Utah, Everybody was talking about Iowa State, Kansas State, but nobody ever said anything about Arizona State.
No.
And Arizona State has come from nowhere. And, man, these kids are playing with a lot of confidence right now. And I expect them to pretty much be that representative for the Big 12.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I think they'll be representing the Big 12, and I think depending on what the matchup is they get in this college football playoffs, they're going to give somebody a good game in that first game because, like you said, that momentum means a lot in football, and they've been winning football games. They haven't lost a game. Their last loss on the season was when their quarterback played. I think they lost one when their quarterback didn't play, but the last loss they've had with their quarterback was when they lost to Tech, and that was September 21st. Since then, they've been running off wins back to back, and I talked about Scatterbo, their running back, who does a great job running the football. But what I like about their quarterback is he doesn't turn the ball over. Only got 5 picks on the season, and in their last 4 or 5 wins, he's 3 touchdowns, no picks against Oklahoma State, 3 touchdowns, no picks against UCF, 3 touchdowns, no picks against Kansas State. He threw a pick against BYU, and they came back out, but they still won the game. Then comes back out against Arizona, 3 touchdowns, no picks again. So he doesn't turn the ball over, and I think that's huge, especially once you get into these later games into the season. Controlling that football means a lot.
Yes, big kid too at quarterback.
Yeah.
He's running over some people too. So I mean, and if you have consistent quarterback play on any level, you're gonna be okay. A guy that doesn't turn the ball over and just does what he needs to do and plays his part in the offense, then you always have an opportunity and a chance to win.
So I think we both got Arizona State in that one as for who we like going into the Big 12 game. Want to go over to the ACC. And the ACC championship game featuring the Clemson Tigers, Dabo Swinney back in another ACC championship game. A lot of people did not see Clemson getting to this spot being an ACC championship game, especially after them losing games. And they lost to South Carolina last week, so they're coming in off of a loss. And even before that, they lost a game that kind of kicked them out of contention whenever they lost to Louisville a few weeks ago. And we all know the beatdown they got against Georgia at the beginning of the year. And on the opposite side of that is an SMU team who lost in week 3 to BYU and hasn't lost a game since then. Their last loss, like I said, was against that BYU team, and that was 2 months ago that this team lost that. Since then, they haven't lost any games. Kevin Jennings, the hometown hero at this point for SMU, doing a great job for this team, leading them to victory. Even some people, now I don't know why they did, but they thought, I guess, Cal would give them a tough game. It's the last game of the season, and, SMU hasn't been anywhere, so they're not used to success. Hey, they blew the doors off California. That game wasn't close in the first quarter. They ended up beating them 38-6, but those games weren't close. That's the thing I like about this SMU team. And in the games that were tough games, they went out there and found a way to win. When they played a tough Duke team who was better than what people thought, Duke ended up finishing the season, I think 8-3 on the season. So they played a tough Duke team. They found a way to win there at the end. They played against Pittsburgh that was ranked at the time. Blew them out 48-25 when they had a tough game against Boston College, and they got a new NFL head coach there in Bill O'Brien. They found a way to win that game. And the games they're supposed to win, they blew people out. They were supposed to be Stanford. They beat them 40-10. It's supposed to be Virginia, 33-7. California, 38-6. So this SMU team is well-rounded. Their speed jumps right off the page whenever you watch this team play. It looks like a track team out there, as it should, when you're right there in the heart of Dallas and you got all those surrounded by all those fast kids and those track stars. And they're starting to get these teams. I think this is the beginning of a really good run for SMU with the amount of recruiting they're going to be able to do in just their own area, just the DFW area. Only competition you have in that DFW that's at least a school next to you like that is TCU. And obviously, I think right now everybody will go to SMU over TCU. You think about the area they're in, the success that they're having. Kevin Jennings is only a sophomore, so he's going to have probably another 2 years in this program. And then SMU, they got money. Like, we don't have to hide it.
That's what I was going to say, Gillis. They paying money, man.
SMU got some long bread, some old money, as people say. They got some old money. I seen somebody doing a video on TikTok. They go around and ask people about their expensive flexes that they have. And this week they did it at SMU. And usually people say, I got a real nice pair of shoes, or I got a car I like. Nah, they did it at SMU this week. Their flex was, my dad's got 4 planes. that he rents out, or I got a $350,000 watch that I keep in my second home. And they got money at SMU, y'all. So this is the beginning of something beautiful, I think, at SMU. I think this is going to be a really good run. And I think it's going to start in this ACC championship game there. 2.5-point favorite over Clemson. I like SMU in this game versus Clemson.
Yeah. I've liked SMU all year long. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's an offense that I would have loved to play in because, I mean, it's a receiver's dream, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been saying it all year. They have the fastest team in football offensively to me. I mean, it's fun offense that you want to play in. And, you know, with Dallas being a rich area for recruiting, you can go out and you can get these guys and you can get them to stay at home because now you paying money as well. So what better place to go and play football than in your hometown and get paid? And, I mean, the alumni has bought into it. The administration has bought into it. Like you say, I think it's going to be a long run for SMU, and I favor them over Clemson this weekend. And like you said, they just handle business, and they've been going about it quietly.
Yeah,
you know, it hadn't been a whole bunch of hype around them. You know, Colorado gets a lot of hype. Miami got a lot of hype.
A lot of hype.
But SMU, they've been in those shadows all year, and they just been handling business. And if they continue to keep that attitude and just keep it on the field, not in the media, not anywhere else, but just keep it on the field, they'll be okay, and I think they'll beat Clemson this weekend.
Yeah, and I think that was big for them. Like you said, staying under the radar. They stayed under the radar all year long. That ended up being huge for this team because they didn't have to fight a lot of expectations. They didn't have to fight off the media on them all the time or saying, oh, we can't wait for SMU to lose. We can't wait for SMU. And part of that was by the rankings committee honestly disrespecting them. They didn't move them into the top 10 until a couple weeks ago. This team's been playing good football all year long, and a lot of that kept them under the radar, and it's worked out in their favor. And I like them. Like you said, I like them in this game against Clemson. I think just too much speed, and Clemson showed multiple ways you can beat them at this point this year. So I think Coach Rhett Lachey can do a good job as far as coaching against Dabo Swinney this weekend.
But it looms big, though, Jalen. Let me tell you why. Because what if SMU loses?
Yeah, man.
Then you thinking about maybe just one ACC team going in, and that's Clemson?
And they got 3 losses. So it's like you put a 3-loss Clemson team, but they'll get the automatic berth.
They'll get the automatic berth.
If they get in there. So
then what do you do with SMU? So it's big game for SMU.
Huge game.
And I hope they pull it out because you don't even want to think about that scenario if they do lose.
And I know the college football committee doesn't want to think about that scenario either because they don't want to have to deal with any more headaches than what they've already having to deal with this Alabama and Miami and where they're putting these teams at where they're putting these teams at in the college football rankings. So that's the ACC championship. Two of the games left. Obviously, I want to go over to the Big Ten, Penn State versus Oregon. Now, this is the game that, like I said, I thought Ohio State would be in this position, and I thought it was going to be the rematch game. But now this is going to be Penn State getting their first crack at Oregon all year long. This is a huge game for both of these programs. Oregon, everybody knew they were going to be good. Coach Dan Lanning doing a great job out there at Oregon. I didn't think nobody thought, at least in my opinion, that Oregon was going to come out here and go undefeated and easily win the Big Ten the way that they've made it look easy this year. Penn State, I know I didn't have them in the Big Ten championship, but this is huge. Just like it's big for Coach Dan Lanning over there, this is huge for Coach Franklin at Penn State because he's another person that's like Ryan Day that it seems like in the big games he always falls under. And honestly, he did it again this year when they played Ohio State, and they haven't played any other big games this year. Besides then, the only big game they played this year was Ohio State. That's what makes this game kind of interesting because, yeah, Penn State does have a good team, but the only team they played that was ranked this year was Ohio State, and they lost that game. They played Illinois. Illinois is ranked number 20 when they beat them earlier in the season. They beat them 21-7. But outside of that, they've played no ranked opponents in this season. Just a couple weeks ago, they almost lost to a Minnesota team who's near the bottom of the Big Ten, and they almost lost to that team. They ended up winning that 26-25. So what are your thoughts about this Big Ten championship game, Penn State versus Oregon?
Well, like you said, Coach Franklin, man, I mean, he's in that same predicament as Ron Day. He just can't win the big game. Mm-hmm. He can't beat the Michigans. He can't beat the Ohio States. So But other than that, he has a great record against everybody else in the Big Ten. This is a big game for him. This is a big game for his team. It's obvious that they'll get in without a win anyway.
Yeah.
But beating Oregon, man, that's gonna be tough. Oregon has been the most consistent team in the country all year, offensive wise and defensive wise, and winning. They hadn't lost a game, and those guys are playing with a lot of confidence. And I just see Oregon winning this. I mean, if you want to keep that number one seed and not have any controversy going into this, to the college football playoffs, you have to go out and win. You have to go and take care of this game, and you just have to win. And I think they will.
Yeah, I like Oregon in this game as well. The 3.5-point favorites going into this game, and I thought honestly there'd be more than that, seeing the lack of talent that Penn State has played so far this year. And Oregon, like you said, they've been the most consistent. They've been a well-oiled machine all year long. They're led by Dylan Gabriel, one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. They got Jordan James, a running back who's been great for them. And they've got a trio of receivers there with Tez Johnson, who's super talented, Evan Stewart, who's probably one of the most talented receivers in the entire nation, and Trayshawn Holden as well at receiver. So they got a trio out there of receivers. They got plenty of weapons on both sides of the ball. The defense has been playing great all year long. I see Oregon winning this game against Penn State and going in as the ultimate number one seed in this college football playoff ranking. So I like Oregon, and I honestly like Oregon in these playoffs too. I'm not sure if I'm ready to pick them as a national champion yet, but I do like their chances in playing them, especially when they match up against some of the other teams towards the bottom of it, like Arizona State or an Indiana, teams like that. I mean, I think Oregon's got a really good chance of doing something in this college football playoffs this year. So I like Oregon, 3.5-point favorite. That game is at 7 o'clock on ABC, CBS when they'll be playing them. And the game right before them is the SEC championship, the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Texas Longhorns in a rematch of their Week 4 matchup. And Texas has only lost. Texas is 11-1. Their only loss is to this Georgia Bulldog team. In that game, their offensive line was dominated by Georgia's defensive line, and it was pretty much that simple. That's what set the tone for the entire game. And also in that game, though, the other dominant unit in that game was Texas's defense. I feel like Texas' defense played great, and they played well enough for them to win. But Georgia's defense outplayed Texas's offense. Now, there's some things I did not like that I said earlier that I saw from Quinn Ewers in last week's win against Texas A&M. He can't have those mistakes like he had against Georgia the first time. He can't have those mistakes like he had against Texas A&M last week against this Georgia defense. They're too opportunistic. Coach Kirby Smart, I think, is a really good coach. And after the way that they should have lost to Georgia Tech last week and they ended up having to win in an 8-overtime thriller, I think Kirby Smart's going to have this team super locked in and ready to play in this game. Texas is a 2.5-point favorite. As of right now, I do like Texas in this game. I like Texas coming back out here and getting some revenge on the Georgia Bulldogs. But if that Georgia front four plays the way that they played the last time, Texas doesn't have a chance. And it's that simple. If Georgia's future first round picks that they have on that D-line with guys like Mykel Williams and those other boys on their front seven play the way that they played in that Texas game, Texas doesn't have a shot. And it's that simple. I don't think Quinn is that type of quarterback to get them out of that type of trouble when he's under that type of pressure. So who do you like in this game? Georgia versus Texas. Texas right now, 2.5-point favorite.
Man, I'm taking Georgia.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you why. Georgia has played the toughest schedule of anybody in the whole country.
In the whole nation.
They've been in big game after big game, controversial game after controversial game, and they just know how to win. And some of those games they lost, like the Alabama game, they came back, should have won, and ended up losing. But other than that, man, they've been in those big games and they found a way to win. And the way they dominated Texas the first time, I think they're gonna make a few wrinkles. I think if Texas does play Ewers, if they want a chance to win, they're gonna have to play Arch Manning a little bit.
I agree.
And kind of depend on his legs and use his legs a little bit and do some different things. But that defensive line dominated. They were quicker. They were faster, and I mean, it wasn't just speed rushing. It was power rushing. They were bull rushing these guys, and they were more physical than Texas front five or their offensive line, and I see them doing the same thing. You know, Texas had a big injury against A&M. Their best offensive lineman got hurt, Banks, and just depending on his availability this week, they say he's going to play, but man, they got a tough job ahead of them.
Man.
and if Texas cannot run the ball or they cannot do anything on offense, then I think Georgia will win, because I think Georgia, as far as I'm concerned, I think they will score points because they can score points with their defense. And I think that's going to be the determining factor. I think that the defenses will both be solid, but I think Georgia's defense will be a lot better than Texas.
Yeah, and in the last game they played, Texas got to play these guys at home. They got to play them at UT and be a little comfortable. This is going to be a home game for Georgia, like the SEC championship always is. It's in Atlanta. It's a home game for Georgia every year in the SEC championship game. And Alabama, Texas going to have to get ready for that environment they saw out there. It's going to be different than what Kyle Field was, because this is a completely different team than the team you were playing on Kyle Field last week with these Georgia Bulldogs. And like you said, man, that O-line, that injury to their O-lineman Banks is huge, because he was one of those guys. I mean, he's projected top 5 pick that ended up being a projected top 10 pick because of that game. I think he probably would have still been projected a top 3 or 5 pick if they didn't see him get beat up the way he got beat up against that Georgia team with Jalen Walker and Mikael Williams and them out there playing the way that they play. So
I had to take Georgia, man. I want Texas to win.
Yeah.
But if I'm going with what I see and the things, I got to take Georgia. I like what they did the first game, and I mean, totally dominant. I mean, Texas wasn't able to do anything.
Yeah.
The only positive thing that came out of that is you seen that Arch Manning wasn't scared of the pressure, and that he stepped up, and you see what type of player he's going to be. But as far as other than that, I'm taking Georgia. Georgia was just dominant, man, defensive wise. And Kirby Smart is a defensive coach with a defensive background. I think he's going to do some things different because he knows Texas is going to do some things different. So you got to have this,
Always consult.
This strategy thing playing off on each other. But I still see them being dominant because, like I said, it wasn't scheme. It was just a team that was more physical and more dominant than these guys in the trenches. So I'm taking Georgia.
That's where the game is going to be won, in the trenches. This game is going to be the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, for sure. Georgia versus Texas. That is at 3 o'clock on ABC. Can't wait to be able to watch that game coming up this Saturday. Folks, we got to go into a break to touch the top of the hour. When we come back, got to talk some NFL. Got Week 14 coming up in the NFL. We'll talk a little bit of NBA as well before we get out of here. And I got to do my NFL top 5 list that I do each and every Wednesday. So stay tuned and stay locked in right here on Centex Primetime. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Central Texas home for sports. It's Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports. Catch all your in-depth sports analysis with the best. The hottest sports show in the evening is Centex Primetime, hosted by Jalen Gillis.
Act like y'all.
Weekdays 5 to 7. This is the Central Texas #1 leader in sports. Centex Sports Network.
That's right, sports fans. We can talk about sports.
And Infinity Sports.
Lighthouse Streaming, a full-scale media agency and your go-to source for all things audio and video. Is your church long overdue for audio and video upgrades? Call Lighthouse Streaming for a free consultation. Does your corporate or church event need audio or video production? Don't stress. Call the guys at Lighthouse Streaming. In business since 2017, Lighthouse Streaming has produced hundreds of live events and completed dozens of church and venue installations. Whatever your AV needs are, Lighthouse Streaming has you covered. Give them a call at 254-252-4206. That's 254-252-4206. Or go to lighthousestreaming.com and set up your free consultation.
Are you hungry for the best fried chicken in town? Check out Crispy Chicken No. 1, 11th and Clay, and their Monday and Tuesday special, the Snack Pack, which includes 2 pieces of chicken, fries, roll, and drink, all for only $6. Also, each Monday through Friday from 4 to 6, you can feed the family for $10 and receive 6 pieces of chicken, fries, and rolls. Crispy Chicken No. 1 features additional daily specials and also includes mouth-watering short ribs, fried catfish, and chicken fried steak. Locally owned and operated and a Waco tradition since 1975. That's Crispy Chicken No. 1 at 11th and Clay.
Are you looking for something new and unforgettable in Waco? Come to the Blazing Asian, where authentic Cambodian flavors meet creative culinary flair. Voted People's Choice as Waco's #1 Asian restaurant since 2019 by both the Wacoan Magazine and the Waco Tribune Herald. Located inside the popular Union Hall on 8th and Franklin, we're serving up family recipes with a twist. Blazing Asian egg rolls are rolled fresh daily, and their sauces or marinades are made in-house with love. Stop by today. Located inside the popular Union Hall on 8th and Franklin. And for Baylor students, enjoy 10% off with your student ID.
Central Texas home for sports. It's Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports. KWBT-FM, HD2 Waco, Temple, Killeen, Fort Cavazos. The new leader in sports in Central Texas is Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports.
Holy Jesus. What is that?
It's time to get in the game.
Do you know what time it is?
Tune in to Primetime Sports Talk with Jalen Gillis.
To me, you are nothing.
Your go-to source for breaking sports news in Central Texas and exclusive Dallas Cowboys coverage.
Start it up, let's go.
Catch us Monday through Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. on the Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Centex Primetime, hour number 2. I'm your host, Jalen Gillis. We're here in hour number 2 talking some football. Just got done talking about the college football playoffs getting ready to start. Conference championship games this weekend coming up as well. Can't wait to be able to watch some of those games. Still joined in studio by Wayne Walker as we take you guys through some of these hot topics in sports right now. Got a few quick takes before we jump into some NFL and talk about NBA, and we'll do my NFL top 5 as well. We see right now Baylor is playing against the back-to-back national champions and UConn playing a basketball game that's going on right now. For if y'all want to tune in back and forth between those two, Baylor is playing against UConn right now, Baylor men's team, and they're playing them pretty good right now. They're up by 4 points, 24-20 in that game. In local news, MCC is finally getting a volleyball team. Volleyball is coming to McLennan Community College. They've already made a hire in their coach, Coach Kyle Anima, coming from the Naval Academy, and is going to be taking over as the head volleyball coach for MCC. MCC has one of the better JUCO athletic programs in the entire nation, not just in Central Texas and not just in Texas. We've been working with them since about 2020. This is one of the premier athletic programs in junior college sports for all around the nation. The basketball teams do good each and every year. Coach Kevin Gill just celebrated 700 wins a couple of weeks ago. Great accomplishment for him. Coach Thomas, they've got MCC women's team. They're ranked number 10 in the nation. Their softball team lost by just a point in the national championship game last year. The baseball team, I think, sent 14 guys Division I on their baseball team. I think 9 of those guys were in Power 4 conferences. So they have a phenomenal program, JUCO program, and now they're adding volleyball to that. And I expect this program to be just as good as these other ones. MCC does a great job. Now, we've been joking with athletic director Trokum out there for some years, saying, hey, I know it'll take a lot. You might have to get some football out there at MCC, because I'm telling you, they'll be a powerhouse if they had a JUCO football team with the amount of talent just that comes out of this Central Texas area alone. I think they'd be a powerhouse. But they are getting the volleyball team out there led by Coach Anima. Has done a great job so far this year, are going to do a great job when he comes in with this program. Wayne, what's your thoughts about MCC adding some volleyball onto it now?
Like you point on, man. When you talk about McLennan Community College, man, you talk about one of the premier JUCO colleges in the country. I mean, very competitive, year in, year out. Great coaches. The athletic director is genuine and always does the right things with the right hires. Great facilities, man, and just a class act. And one of the things that we should be proud about here in Waco, in this city, because McLennan is one of those teams that you can talk about it. You can go outside of Waco and you can talk about it. And like I said, one of the premier JUCOs in the country. National championships in baseball. In that tournament, in that conversation for basketball, Coach Thomas got the girls playing well right now, ranked. And softball, one of the premier JUCOs in the country. I mean, it's just nothing more you can say about the talent that they put out and the excellence that they put out every year. So kudos to McLennan Community College. They keep us relevant around here. So a great accomplishment for them to add another premier program to what they're doing in volleyball.
Yeah, they're doing a good job right now, and like you said, year in and year out with what they do, and with all of their programs from baseball to softball, basketball, everything that they have down there. So I expect volleyball to pick right back up where the rest of the teams are already at. A couple more quick takes in here, talking a little bit of football. We didn't get a chance to talk about the suspension going on in the NFL right now. Trevor Lawrence got hit last week. Against Azeez Al-Shir, linebacker for the Houston Texans. He has now been suspended for 3 games after the hit on Trevor Lawrence. Talked about it a little bit on Monday, but Wayne, I wanted to get your opinion on what you thought about it. And now the suspension is out. When I talked about it, it's been a lot of back and forth on both sides. So what's your opinion on this whole Trevor Lawrence hit situation?
Well, it just can't happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a history of hits like that, and being dirty. So he's already labeled a dirty player, for one. And when you hit a guy's franchise quarterback, and I don't think it was more the hit. I think it was more the form that he threw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you just can't do that. You can't put yourself out there. You can't take that risk. And he came out and apologized. And when you playing football, it's full speed.
Yeah.
So instincts take over. But they've been trying to get that out the game for the last 10 years. I mean, so the suspension, I think, should have been 2 games, maybe not 3. You take three game checks from a guy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Then you fine him. So I don't think the hit warrants the suspension, but you just can't do that. You can't take that risk, and especially throwing your forearm. I think if he'd just dove on him or something like that, then it's different. But when you throw the forearm and you hit him right in the head with your forearm, then and you already labeled a dirty player in the league, and that's what's been coming out, and that's what I've heard. He's already a dirty player.
Yeah.
And so that's why he got that lengthy suspension. That's why it's a 3-game suspension instead of a 1-game suspension or just a fine or just 2 games. So you just can't do it.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you said it perfectly. The forearm, I believe, and the history is what got him those 3 games more than so of the hit, because like the points that D'Amico Ryans and some of the other guys around the league were saying, is, these quarterbacks now are kind of pushing the needle on this slide thing or the running out of bounds, and they've been taking advantage of it. We've seen that reports coming out from Detroit or from the Detroit locker room saying that Dan Campbell before the Thanksgiving game saying we need to hit Caleb Williams because he's been one of the main guys taking advantage of I'm going to run out of bounds and I kind of slow down, and right before I'll get 6 or 7 extra yards right before I go out of bounds because I know y'all can't hit me over here on the sideline. And, guys, defensive guys are trying to take that out of the league as well. The quarterback we seen play a couple of weeks ago from Patrick Mahomes faking like he was going out of bounds. He ran about 40 yards up the sideline because they know that on that sideline that the quarterbacks are pretty much protected, and it's kind of been similar with the slides. A lot of these guys have been, sliding a lot later because they feel protected. And honestly, you're putting yourself in more harm's way with that slide, especially when you're doing it in the middle of the field with guys coming after you because you can't protect the back of your head whenever you're doing that. So I think if he did not leave with that forearm, like you said, that it probably wouldn't have been blown up the way that it is. And the history on top of it is what really got him that suspension because the league is going to want to send a message. They're not going to let guys keep doing stuff like this, especially once you get that label, like you said, of a dirty player throughout the league.
Right. And then you got to think about who you hitting. You hitting the guy that's getting paid the most money on the team, the franchise
in the league.
So when you talk about these, you talk about the NFL, you talk about who they coming to see. I bet you it's more people coming to see Trevor Lawrence than it is him. So, and when you knock these people out the game, then, it takes a hit on the NFL. It takes a hit on the franchise because this guy is the CEO of the franchise.
Yeah.
He's a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, the league has to do something to modify this rule about the slide and the going out of bounds. Because like you say, you can fake it and you can do it. And then you take advantage of the slide and you slide at the last minute and guys are already in full motion and going full speed. You don't know whether to let up or not. And Trevor Lawrence is a big guy.
Yeah, he's 6'6".
You think about a guy named like Josh Allen.
Yeah.
That probably ain't gonna slide.
Yeah.
You gotta gear up to go hit this guy. So you have to modify. They're gonna have to modify this rule and do something about it. Because if not, you're gonna keep having things like this happen in the league, and we don't need that. We don't need that. And I just think with him, I think it was just the fact that he's already labeled a dirty guy.
Yeah.
And when you take a shot like that at a quarterback, then you're gonna get suspended.
Yeah.
You're gonna get fined.
They're gonna get you with it every time especially now, like you said. I mean, these guys are. There's way more. Everyone in the stadium is here to see Trevor Lawrence. Most of the people in the league didn't know who Al Shahir was until they hit this dude to even figure out all his history and all the other things that are put out there. So they got to protect. They're going to always protect those guys because that's their investment. The NFL is going to protect their investment at all times. And you never want to see somebody getting hurt on the field anyway, no matter who's going or who's sliding or who's playing out there. They want to be able to keep these guys safe, especially going forward with all the question marks around NFL safety and stuff like that right now. So they're going to want to protect these guys as much as they can. Staying with football a little bit here in the quick takes. I feel like once a week I end up getting something out of Michael Parsons' podcast that he says this time wasn't anything bad about the Cowboys this time. I'm sure next week he'll give us something to talk about with the Cowboys again. But he said that he thinks Ashton Jeanty has earned the Heisman in college football over Travis Hunter. With the type of season he had. I think Jeanty now with 2,200 yards on the season and doing a great job. Obviously, he's got his team in the college football playoffs pretty much. I think that's the reason why they're in the college football playoffs because they want to try to advertise a potential, record-breaking season and a potential Heisman-winning running back in Ashton Jeanty going out there and doing that. And he rushed for 22, historic season, 2,200 yards on the season so far this year. So he's done a phenomenal job for the Boise State Broncos and for their entire team and their trajectory of where they're going because nobody was talking about Boise State before then. So I get all of that. But at the same time, Ashton Jeanty has got a season that you can compare to other people's right now. When you talk about a Melvin Gordon and what he did, I don't think anybody's going to touch what Barry was doing. And even if they get the numbers, I wouldn't put it up there with a Barry because he's playing against Nebraska and Oklahoma at the peak of Nebraska and Oklahoma, and Ashton Jeanty is playing in the Mountain West, which is a lesser conference. But there's people you can compare his season to. I don't think there's anybody in the history of college football that you can compare Travis Hunter to. And with what he's been able to do on both sides of the ball for Colorado and elevating that team, a team that just had one win a couple of years ago. So I still think it's Travis Hunter, but Micah said he feels like Jeanty has gone out there and earned it. What's your thoughts on what he said in this Heisman stuff?
Well, that's his opinion, and everybody has one, you know. Mm-hmm. But, man, for the outstanding job that Travis Hunter did, nobody's done that.
Nobody.
You know, if you're talking about the Heisman is for the best college player, the best college football player in the whole country. And you see that. This guy plays over 100 plays per game, man. The conditioning, the concentration that you have to have, like it's never been done. And let me tell you this: when Barry Sanders won his Heisman, we played him. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen anything like Barry at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, he ran for almost 300 yards on us. Man, we played him to a 45 to 48 game.
Man.
And this guy ran for over 300 yards on us in a game. And we going back and forth.
Yeah.
It's our offense against Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Because he was weaving through us like he wasn't anything.
Yeah.
And it was just special. And he didn't have a lot of blocking or anything. He was just doing it on his own. Now, Gentry, they giving him the ball.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes.
Barry Sanders probably had 21, 22 carries, and he ran for over 300 yards.
Come on.
This guy's getting the ball 38 times per game. So when you want to talk about something special, you got to talk about Travis Hunter. You know, a guy that can get it done on the offensive side of the ball and catch 3 touchdowns and then turn around and get an interception. Can turn around and be that lockdown guy on that best receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And play both sides of the ball, all the plays, and don't take a play off. And that is special.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion, you know, which I think me and your opinion about that Heisman Trophy is the opinion of a lot of people around the country.
Yeah.
A lot of football players in the NFL. You know, so, I mean, Michael has a right to his opinion, but it don't mean it's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes, sometimes you just need to. Your opinion is your opinion, but I think right now he needs to be worrying about who they playing this week instead of worrying about a Heisman.
I say that every single week that I see something, a headline off of his podcast. You know, you would think with how many headlines he's put out that the Cowboys are 16-0 this season or something, and he's got 23 sacks on the season, but that's not the case. And
I just think he loves the controversy.
Yeah, I think so too. I can 100% agree with that.
I think what he does is he tries to draw a lot of attention to himself, to his podcast, because it's making money for him and it keeps him relevant and keeps him in the news. And I think he loves that attention, so that's what he's doing.
And I think that's a dangerous road to go up, especially when you're playing a sport that somebody can judge you on week in and week out. That's on national television, and we can look at every play that you make. We can look at everything you say in the post game. I think it's a dangerous route going up that route. We've seen guys in the media try to take that route and being the controversy guy and all this stuff. And, you know, it's dangerous for them. I think it's even more dangerous for somebody that's playing a sport because we're going to get something to talk about you on week in and week out.
You know, after the last 2 games, he can talk
because
he's been playing well.
Yeah, he has.
But it's the problem comes and it exists when you don't play well. And then you have to go out there, and then you have to answer all these questions and this, that, and other. So, you know, they've won a couple of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been playing well. So now he can talk. But the question becomes, when you don't play well and your team loses and they running the ball and they running it right at you, then that's when the question becomes, hey, man, well, are you spending more time on thinking about your podcast or are you thinking about what you're doing on this football field.
Yeah.
And I think like me and you, and I think you stated it the best and said, hey, I just think, man, in season, you shouldn't have that going on. If you want to do that outside the season, when the season's over with, then that's your choice, and you can do what you want to do and say what you want to say.
Yeah, and
I think it's a dangerous line, like you said.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous line to try to live on because the internet doesn't forget, and the internet is forever. So these people are gonna find stuff you said this year, 6 years from now. Whenever you miss a tackle or do something, they're gonna go back to stuff you said this year. They're gonna go back to stuff you said at the beginning of the season. So, like I always say, I think you should just focus on football. But for what he was talking about with the Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty debate, I think it should be Travis Hunter. He went out there on their last game when they blew out Oklahoma State 52-0. He had a pick in that game and 3 touchdowns. It's not many people that can say any stat line remotely close to that at any point in college football history. And he does stuff like that week in and week out. Like you said, playing 100 snaps in a game consistently is pretty ridiculous to be able to do, and playing it at a high level. It's not like he's just a guy out there. Right. He's their number one DB, and he's their number one option on offense as well. Even though they got a stacked wide receiver room, he's still the number one option. He's still the guy they're looking for on 4th downs and big 3rd down plays. So he does a phenomenal job. I think Travis Hunter, like I've said all year, they should park the Heisman right over there in Boulder, Colorado, and give it to him. And then the fact that he was left off the Thorpe Award is already crazy and kind of telling me how they're trying to judge some of these kids because of their dislike for Coach Prime, which doesn't make any sense. Him not even being a candidate for the Thorpe Award is absolutely ridiculous when he's going to be the highest corner drafted in the league. That doesn't make any sense. So
these people that you know that give out these awards and things of this nature, you know, it's all about ego most of the time, and they don't like Prime, so you know, in order to just kind of like piss him off, we're gonna do this. So, they don't want him being that man. They don't want him being talked about. A lot of people hate on you, and I think that's what they're doing with Travis Hunter. I think they're hating on him. You know, one of the things about him, I think he kind of needs to keep quiet himself and just kind of stay humble.
Yeah.
You know, because he's putting himself out there too. He's been doing a little talking, and you know, it's okay to pose. Everybody that's won the Heisman pretty much can pose.
For sure.
You know, Desmond Howard did it. You know, all the guys do it. But he's been saying a few things here lately. But just stay in your zone, stay humble, just keep doing what you're doing, and I think you deserve the Heisman.
Yeah, I definitely think he's deserving of that award. So we'll see. That's in a couple of weeks as well. So I'm excited to be able to see what direction they're going to go with this Heisman, and if they'll give it to a Genty or if they'll decide to go ahead and give that to Travis. So there'll be plenty for us to talk about once those awards get settled as well. Before we go over and move to talk about some NFL, I want to talk a little bit of NBA season. NBA in full effect right now. Been going for about a month and a half now. Teams about 20 games into the season, starting to get some storylines out of the league. Starting to see some different things. One of them being LeBron James. You know, the Lakers got started off to a great start, but they've kind of struggled as of late. LeBron in one of his worst shooting slumps I think he's had since 2004, which was his rookie year. Last game against the Timberwolves, he was 4 for 16 in that game. Missed all his threes. He was 0 for 9 from 3 in the game before that against Utah. Right before that against OKC, he had only 12 points in the game, which the shocker for LeBron. 0 for 4 in threes. He hasn't made a 3 in about a week and some change. He's I think now after that he's like 0-16 or 0-17 from threes in his last 3 or 4 games. So hasn't been shooting the ball well, and obviously LeBron, one of those people with a lot of haters. So everybody's waiting on the decline of LeBron like they've been waiting on the last 22 years, or now that he's 22 years in. And some people are saying, this is the decline. He's going to be bad now, and this is when we're going to see the bad LeBron, and he's going to be taken away from the game because he's just out there. And I think it's just a bad shooting slump right now because it's a long season. It's 82-game season. I think this is more of just a shooting slump than it is him declining and getting ready to fall off a cliff, as some people would try to say. And then even with his fall off of a cliff season right now. He's averaging 22, 8, and 9 assists as well. So, I mean, that's most people's career high, and that's his version of falling off. But what's your opinion on this? Is this the end of LeBron's dominance, or is this a bad shooting slump for LeBron?
It's just a bad shooting slump, man. He's a shooter.
Yeah.
This is basketball, man. And man, sometimes you make one little adjustment and then you fix that. And the thing about in season is hard when you got a game this day and then the next day, so you don't get to do that. You have to go and shoot around and do it, or do it after the game or whatever. But I mean, that's a shooter slump, and everybody goes through them. You know, anybody that has ever played the NBA, even Michael Jordan, sometimes has had. You don't have back-to-back. Sometimes you have back-to-back good games, and sometimes you don't. I mean, it's just like baseball. You can strike out 20 times and then come back a week later, and then you start on your streak of hitting home runs. It's the same in football. You can be a receiver and you just dropping passes, or you a running back and you didn't fumble the last 2 or 3 games, and now they say you got a fumbling problem.
Yeah,
you can't hold on to the ball. It's the same thing with a quarterback who throws an interception. Sometimes Dax throws 4.
Yeah,
but it's just a slump. It's just an adjustment that you have to make, and he will make that adjustment. He's been in the league for 22 years. He didn't get to play this long for nothing.
Yeah,
so he knows how to fix it. He knows what he's doing wrong, and sometimes it's just not your time. It's just sometimes it's just that you don't feel it, and you have to get back into what you were doing. It may be something minor, and something you just have to make a little small adjustment to fix it. And LeBron will.
Yeah,
he's one of the greatest players of all time. I know if he didn't feel like he could compete with the younger guys, he would have retired.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that he knows that he can play, and he's been playing at a high level.
Just had 4 straight triple doubles last week.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, he'll make that adjustment. It's just a shooter slump.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a slump going on. But, people so ready to see LeBron fall off, and they'll say, oh, man, he's been shooting the ball terrible. Like, we weren't just praising him for having 4 or 5 straight triple doubles in a row just a week ago. It's a long season. He's going to have shooting slumps. He's going to have games where he's, like at the beginning of the year, he had like 3 of those 4 or 5 straight triple doubles, but he also had like 3 games where he scored 30 in a row. So, I mean, it's a long season, and it's a game of runs. It's up and down all season long, especially at this age. Can he go out there and average 30-something points a game at this age? No. But to say that he's going to fall off and he's going to be bad at basketball some kind of way, I don't think so. He's never going to be bad at basketball. We seen Michael Jordan, after 2 retirements, come back on the Wizards and was giving people 40 or 50. So, like, once you're up here, you're up here. We seen Kobe in his last game ever in the NBA drop 60. So you're never going to be bad at basketball for the people that think he's just going to all of a sudden wake up tomorrow and just forget how to play basketball or something like that. So right now, Lakers 12-9. That's more important is the fact that they've been losing games and that Anthony Davis has been in and out of the lineup. I think that's the biggest storyline with the Lakers than LeBron shooting the basketball not that well right now, because we'll know he'll get that together. But for the Lakers, they got to work out some things. They got to get better defensively, like I've been saying all year long. They got to figure out how to get some perimeter defense out there on the wings, because that's what's killing them right now. That's the reason that they're 12-9 is they can't guard any guards. They can guard the bigs with Anthony Davis down low, but they can't guard any guards right now because none of their guards are defenders. So they got to figure out a way to get some guys out of there. Another team that's kind of breaking out of a slump is the Milwaukee Bucks, who started off this season 2-8. We're sitting at the bottom of the conference, and everybody, wondering what's going on. We've even talked about them on the show, and like, hey, you can't be spending as much money as you're spending on this team with Giannis and with Dame and even guys like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis and guys that are getting paid. Chris Middleton, all those guys are making money on the team. They got one of the highest payrolls in the league and be one of the bottom teams in the league. But since then, they've won 9 out of the last 10 games, and they're sitting at 5th place in the East right now. Now, one of that is they are playing a lot better basketball, but they're 5th in the East because the East is absolutely terrible this year. There's really only 6 teams above 500 in the entire East right now, and there's 11 teams above 500 in the West. So that just shows you the disparity between the East and the West. Before the Milwaukee Bucks, they've gotten back to playing good basketball. They're back above 500. They've won 9 out of the last 10 games, playing really good. Giannis still playing at an MVP level. He's one of those people that I think voters get voter fatigue on him and just kind of forget about him and these talks as one of the best players in the league. But, I mean, he's averaging 32 points, almost 33 because it's 32.7, 11.7 rebounds, and also out there averaging 7 assists a game. So he's playing phenomenal basketball, playing at a high level. And Damian Lillard's still giving you 8 assists and 26 points. So the Bucks are starting to round and figure out their identity under Coach Doc Rivers. Still waiting on Chris Middleton to get back. He hadn't played this season. But what's your thoughts about the Bucks and them being able to get out of their slump?
Well, their problem was always defense. Mm-hmm. On the offensive end of the ball, they got Dame, they got Giannis, they got Lopez, and then they got Bobby Portis they can bring off the bench. And then you got Chris Middleton, who's still on IR, mm-hmm. but is a scorer.
Yeah.
So you're going to get your scoring. They couldn't play defense as well. They were slow. They got Drew Holiday left, which was a defensive guy.
Man.
Was that lockdown guy that turned the point guards over and then could go out and play against a shooting guard and he would lock them down. And that's why they were successful then. So their problem since he left has been defense because they got enough scoring. But they're going to have to lock down. And that's what they've been doing over this stretch. They've been playing defense. They've been locking some guys down. And like you say, Giannis has been outstanding. Him along with Dame have finally figured it out how to play with each other.
Yep.
And I think that's the key to them winning. They got the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just have to play defense because that was their problem. Since Drew Holiday left, they couldn't play defense. They can score the ball.
Yeah. And
they still got more scoring coming back when Chris Middleton comes back.
That's another 20 points.
So you think about that. And he's pretty much a pretty good, impressive defensive player himself.
Mm-hmm.
So when they get him back, I think they'll be okay, and I think they'll be right in the running with the Celtics, the Cavaliers, mm-hmm. and the Knicks. And I think it'll be them in Boston. So it'll be those guys that's playing for something in the East.
Because
I
agree.
Like you said, the East, that's the only thing you had to look forward to. And Indiana, you can throw Indiana in there. And you can put
Orlando's been playing
Orlando, good. But the everybody else, I mean, they trash.
They're not even above 500.
They trash.
I mean, it's crazy.
I think they'll compete. And it'll come down to those about 5 teams in the East, and I think Milwaukee, they can boast of their roster, and they can say their roster is just as good as anybody else's in the league.
Yeah, and you got a player that's unstoppable. I think they're right in there as for a team that none of those guys want to play that we even named, including Cleveland and Boston. I mean, Boston's a really good team, but Drew Holiday and a lot of those guard defenders they can't guard Giannis. And you don't want, and you're going to be hesitant to even stick Tatum on him because he'll make Tatum foul out in the first half. With his style of play. So I've said it for the last 3 or 4 years that Milwaukee, when they're healthy, their problem is they haven't been healthy in 4 years. Every year they go into the playoffs. Last year they didn't have anybody. I think Middleton was the last guy left standing. They didn't have Giannis, and Dame ended up getting hurt as well too. But when they're healthy, they're a team that nobody in the East wants to play because they got something that nobody can do anything with. And that whether that's Boston or Cleveland, and that's Giannis. You can't do anything with 33 points and 12 boards. This is the same Giannis we seen in the Game 6 in the finals the year they won, dropped 50. There ain't too many people dropping 50 in a closeout game in the finals in the history of the league.
It wasn't none of them jump shots.
No, none of them jump shots.
I mean, and that's what he does. He's going to take the ball and into the court, and he's coming down. He's trying to dunk on you.
He's the most dominant player we've seen since Shaquille O'Neal. As far as attacking that rim with the ferocity, that's what he's going to do each and every time. It's going to go ahead.
And with him bringing in Dame, who can hit threes and can shoot, and it's a better score. And then you having Middleton on the floor at the same time, and then you have a big 7'2" guy like Brook Lopez that can score and hit threes. which he should be posting up.
Yeah.
But he's shooting threes, and then you got a guy like Porter that can come in off the bench and give you 20 anytime he wants to.
Yeah.
So the pieces are there. Like you said, they have to be healthy, and they have to play defense. If they can play defense, they'll be good because that's what their problem was last year. You can't stop a Donovan Mitchell because Dame can't do it. So you don't have anybody that can do it.
No.
And they have to play defense. Defense, scoring is not going to be a problem. They got two of the premier scorers in the whole league, and then they got a guy like Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Porter that can fill it up, and they can go out and score over 100 each game.
Yeah.
They just have to play defense.
Yeah.
And they have to be healthy, like you said.
Yeah, those are their biggest things. And they added a guy like Torian Prince, former Baylor Bear, and he's a good defender out there, and he's been playing good for them this year. So we'll see once these guys all get healthy if they'll finally be able to mesh and come together and come together out there on the court, because as of right now, they haven't been able to do it. But a good sign is them winning 9 out of the last 10 games and getting out of that slump, because like we both just said, the East is not good. So once you get above 500, you're already a contender in the East. So them getting over 500 helps them a lot, and they'll be a dangerous team as they get further and further into the year and get more healthy. Folks, we got a chance to talk some NBA, talked a little bit of college football and everything. Want to end the show talking about some NFL and talking about my NFL top 5, the list we give out week in and week out here on the show. This week on the show, it's going to be a little bit different, but some teams will stay the same in this list. I'll go ahead and start it off with my NFL top 5 list. I'll start at number 5. At number 5, each and every week, this is a hard part for me to do at the 5th spot because there's so many teams that hover around that same place and just that 9 and 10 win range, and it's like, well, who do you put in there, and do you take this team out? Do you put this team in? So at number 5, I'll go ahead and start it off, and I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 9-3 on the season. We just seen what Russell Wilson did last week in their win against the Bengals. No, the Bengals aren't a good team, but they got one of the scariest offenses in the league with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And Russell Wilson did something that I didn't think we would see him do anymore and put up 400 yards in that win. And, that was big for them because now you see the ability for them to not only be able to match teams defensively, but they can also match teams offensively as well if Russ is playing that good. And George Pickens has been playing great since Russ has been in that lineup. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren do a good job of splitting carries down there. And T.J. Watt leading their defense, as always. At the 4th spot, I got the Buffalo Bills, 10-2 on the season. Been playing great football. Josh Allen right there at the top for MVP discussion. He's right there in that top 2 or 3 for who you would consider being an MVP of this league. Been playing great and been doing it without a number 1. Everybody thought this would be the year, including myself, that they would fall off. I didn't think they were going to be bad. But before the season, I think I picked Miami to win this, and that was obviously just a terrible pick. I picked Miami to win that division. But Buffalo, 10-2 right now, playing without the big names on offense. Their defense has been playing pretty good. They just blew out the 49ers, and I didn't really move them up anywhere because of that win against the 49ers, because the 49ers are, at this point, playing with nobody. I think even Jordan Mason, who's been their bell cow this year, he's going to be out for the rest of the year now. We just seen the news of McCaffrey going to be out for the rest of the year now. After he just got back and played one game, he's already going to be right back out for the season. I think the Niners are done. So I didn't move them up too much because of that win, but it's more of just their body of work throughout this year so far. They're 10-2, even though they're playing in one of the worst divisions in the NFL, because Miami isn't good, and we all know how we feel about the Jets and the Patriots. So there's no reason to even bring them up. But the Bills, I got them at number 4. At number 3, I had to move them back a slot. I got Kansas City. I got Kansas City Chiefs sitting at number 3, 11-1 on the season. So most people be like, man, that's the best record in the league. Right there, tied with the best record in the league with Detroit. I think these things that Kansas City has been doing is catching up to the Kansas City Chiefs. Wayne, you talked about it last week with Kansas City and how they're just barely getting by with these wins. Then they go out and barely get by with a win against the Raiders on Black Friday last week. And at that point, I was just fed up. Like, the Raiders are the worst team in the league, man. Like, you're going out here and barely scraping by with a win. More help from the refs in that game for all the people that watched it. We've seen the multitude of flags that came out in those last few drives. Another game where Kansas City just scrapes by. This time you're playing against Aiden O'Connell, and you let them – the Raiders were winning this game for the majority of the game. Kansas City had to come back and win this game at the end of the game as usual. So even though they're 11-1, I had to scoot them back on the list. At number 2, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia playing the best football in the league right now. Saquon Barkley, Offensive Player of the Year. That can go ahead and just get penciled in and locked it in. I would vote him for MVP if I had a vote, but that's a quarterback award. We all know at this point, unless you do something ridiculous like Adrian Peterson, I think he was the last running back to win MVP. That was over a decade ago. But if I could put somebody in there, it would be Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown's unstoppable on the outside. We saw that in their win against Baltimore. A great win for them against Baltimore. They were struggling. They started out slow, like they do in every single game. They started out slow in this one, but they picked it up, and their defense just completely shut down the Ravens. Ravens couldn't do anything else as they got later into that football game. This defense is playing great. The rookies at DB are playing great with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who's really, really come on since they moved him into that nickel spot. That seemed like a match made in heaven as far as putting him in that nickel corner spot because he's been playing phenomenal. Darius Slay's still out there on the back end as well. But their front seven, Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter is playing like the most unblockable player. And he was tossing people around. I know y'all watched the game, but if you didn't, just go back and just watch Jalen Carter's highlights in that game. He only had a sack in that game, but he is throwing around Tyler Linderbaum, who's one of the best centers in the NFL. He's throwing him around like a rag doll in that game for pretty much the entire game in there. Jalen Carter is really starting to make his mark in this league, and he's got this Philadelphia defense playing great. At number 1, I got the Detroit Lions. That's the only team left on there, so that wasn't a big shocker. But I got Detroit. They're still sitting at 11-1 right now, still playing great football. They've got a big test coming up tomorrow as they play the Packers on Thursday Night Football. The Packers are no slouch at all. Packers are a really good team. And then right after that, they turn around and got to play the Bills the next week after that. So they've got a tough little stretch coming up here in the next couple of games. But the way Detroit has dominated teams throughout this year, I think has to be applauded. They played a close game against Caleb Williams, and they honestly could have lost that game if it wasn't for one of the worst coaching blunders I've seen in a long time with how Matt Eberflus let that last 40 seconds go, and that cost him his job. Probably cost him a chance of being a head coach in the league forever. I don't see him really getting another shot at being a head coach. You can be a coach again, but as far as being a head coach, that might have cost him his shot at being a head coach forever with the way he fumbled that. But Detroit's still finding a way to win games. The games are supposed to win, they win. They've blown out multiple teams this year. Super explosive offense with led by Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs, who in my opinion has ascended to a top 5 running back in this league. He is really, really a good player, especially considering that he only gets half the carries throughout the game as well, and he's still sitting right under 1,000 yards right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, their offensive line is the best in the league. Their defense is questionable. That's the biggest question, and I have them at number 1 in the list right now, but honestly, I don't know if I would put them to win against Philadelphia if they were to play in a playoff series as of right now. But I do like Detroit and what they've done so far this year, so I got them at my number 1 spot. So I got Detroit number 1, Philly 2, Kansas City 3, Buffalo 4, and Pittsburgh 5. Wayne, I'll let you go ahead with your top 5 list and then what you thought about my top 5 list on here.
Okay. First of all, I'm gonna give I'm gonna start from the bottom to the top, and I'm gonna say my honorable mention picks.
Okay.
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Green Bay.
For sure.
Yeah, and the Broncos have been playing well. Those are my honorable mention picks. But mine is a little different from yours. I'm gonna say Minnesota is my number 5 pick. They've been playing well. They've been finding a way to win.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold had been turning over the ball. Got a great defense, and pretty much every level of the on offense, as long as the quarterback doesn't turn the ball over.
Yep.
You got 2 legitimate receivers out there, and you got a running back. So I think they can compete and they can play. They play in a tough division with Detroit, and they play against the Packers. So, but they've been consistent all year. They only have 2 losses, and I like them. So they're my number 5 pick. My number 4 pick is the same as yours. It's Buffalo. Buffalo being carried by Josh Allen on offense, and their defense is just doing enough to win. But Josh Allen is the leader of that team, probably the league MVP.
Yeah.
The way he's been playing, because he don't have anything. He don't have a number one receiver. He has Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper was a number one, but now he's like more of a number two. But he's still,
and he's missed time too.
Yeah, and he missed a lot of time, and he's just getting into a new offensive system. So I like Buffalo. Buffalo's been playing well. They've been playing team ball, and that's how they've been winning. 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. So they've been doing it on there, and so they're my number 4 team. My number 3 team is the same as yours, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
The Kansas City Chiefs is, like you say, only has 1 loss.
Yeah.
But their defense is regressing, and that was what was carrying them in the beginning. They were able to stop teams, and Patrick Holmes could just score. You know, they didn't have to score 28 points to win.
Yeah.
They could score 20 points and they could win because their defense was shedding guys out, keeping them at 13, you know, doing all the little things.
Yeah.
But they hadn't been able to cover anybody lately. And I don't know what's going on there, but every game they played, it's been a close game. It's come down to the wire.
Mm-hmm.
And winners always find a way to win, but and it's some questionable calls late in games where there's a penalty this way or that way that helps Kansas City win.
Yeah.
And from what I seen last Friday with them in LA, it was the same as your opinion. It was enough for me. You know, I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan. I'm with Kansas City. I want them to win, and they're still champions. So they still world champions. Nobody has gone to the Super Bowl and knocked them out yet. And until that happens, they're gonna always be in the conversation of the top 2, 3, 4 teams in the league as long as they got him. But they depended on their defense, and their defense has been a shadow of itself lately. And until they start playing better defense, they're my number 3 team.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2 team is the Detroit Lions, and this is where we differ at.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Detroit been consistent all year, been led by their offense, but their defense just has so many injuries, man.
So many.
At some point, I don't think you can sustain the wins, and they're gonna have a good test this week. I don't know who they play, but it's a big game.
They got Green Bay tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a big game. So that's going to be a big test for them. They can score. They can score points.
Mm-hmm.
They probably should have lost against Chicago.
For sure.
If you have another coach and he's on making the right decisions as far as being the leader of the team, and then you have a different ball game. But I just don't think they can sustain their winning with their defense. And like you said, I mean, as far as offense, Jamar Gibbs, Amon St. Brown, these guys are incredible. Their offensive line, they can do whatever they want to on offense. I just don't think they're going to be able to sustain the winning as far as defense. You got too many injuries. They getting guys off the streets right now.
Yeah.
So this late in the season, to be doing that, I just think that's going to be detrimental to them in their winning. So they're my number 2 team, regardless. My number 1 team, I said it last week that they were my number 1 last week.
You did.
I mean, just looking at it, they've been playing better than anybody. It's the same thing we said about South Carolina in college football. I mean, when a team just gets hot and they learn how to play together in that chemistry and they come together, that's what they've done. Their defense, man, has been the biggest difference. Last year, they could score and they could play. I mean, they could play on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense just was raggedy. But this year, man, their defensive line, their secondary, they just been consistent. and Darius Slay missed the last game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you talking about your top corner missing the last game, and then you still go out and you dominate defensive wise, and then you have all these weapons on offense, and then you got one of your best receivers that's still not playing, Devontae Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So you relying on Barkley and Brown and Hurt.
Yep.
So they've been playing very, very well. I think, like I said, man, they were my number one team last week because I can just see it. I can just see it all coming together, and it's all coming together at the right time. Everything is gelling, and man, it's going to be hard for anybody to beat Philadelphia right now. I just
anybody.
Yeah, because they can do so many things. They can throw the ball, they can pass the ball, they got a dominant offensive line, they got a dominant defensive line, and the games is won in the trenches. And they're winning that battle against anybody.
Yeah.
And for them to go out and beat Baltimore the way they did Baltimore, and they beat them.
Yeah, they did.
They beat them. They beat them up offensively, and they beat them up defensively. And so for them to do that and to hold probably the top scoring offense of all time and do what they did against them, man, that shows a lot. And like I said, I seen it the week before. Everything coming together for Philadelphia, and that's my number one team this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be any arguments out of me with that Philadelphia team. Like you said, they can. This team, yeah.
That's what you said.
Hey, said if you come on the show tomorrow, he might have on a whole tracksuit when he come up here tomorrow with the Eagles. But yeah, that man, no one's beating them right now. And there was all these questions about Nick Sirianni. He's been doing a great job coaching his team. There are all these questions about Jalen Hurts. He stopped turning that football over, and he's leading his team. I mean, in that win against Baltimore, he had 19 passes. They don't need for him to throw the ball 25, 30 times, and they've identified that they don't need him to throw the ball 30 times, and that's why they're winning. Their offensive line is one of the best in the league, led by Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and all those big guys they got out there. Saquon doing what he's doing, A.J. Brown. Like you said, the perfect description of it was they beat up Baltimore on both sides of the ball. Instead of just beating them, they were beating them up. They're physical on offense. I mean, we seen what Jalen Hurts was able to do on those QB sneaks that he's able to get, and on some of those design runs that he's able to get. He's a physical runner. Saquon Barkley is a physical runner. A.J. Brown is a physical runner, so they're beating people up on both sides of the ball. And I already talked about Jalen Carter and what he's been doing for their defense, but Zach Bond, too, their inside linebacker that was questionable at the beginning of the year. A lot of people talking about. He's one of the league leaders in tackles this year, and he's been playing phenomenal. He's flying around the football everywhere. So being led by this defense and the way that the offense is playing, man, this team is better than that team that went to the Super Bowl in 22.
No doubt.
This team is better than that team. And the sky's the limit for Philadelphia. They've got enough to be able to beat anybody in the league.
And Jalen, they did that with two of their top stars out. Devontae Smith didn't play, or Darius Slay didn't play last week.
Mm-hmm.
And these two of their top players on both sides of the ball. I mean,
against Baltimore, who's a top team.
Right.
That's the team that we all had at the top.
I mean, I just started to see in the way they started to jail, man, and you just kind of see it as an ex-football player. Hey, this team is coming together,
mm-hmm.
you know. And Philadelphia, if they continue to play like they've been playing, I think they're the toughest team to beat in the whole NFL. I think they can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. No, honestly,
to be honest.
I think this team has enough to go out there and win the Super Bowl. And the last two Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, like you said, man, that Raiders game that kind of just did it for me. When seeing you struggle against a team like that, I got them losing on Sunday to I got them losing on Sunday to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think I like the way that the Chargers have been playing these last few weeks, man. And they should have lost. I'm not gonna say they should have lost. They almost lost to them when they played them 4 or 5 weeks ago at the beginning of the week in like week 4 when Herbert was injured. He just came back from an injury early because he said he didn't want to miss the Kansas City game, and they still played them tough in that one. So I got them beating them in this one. I think that just like winning is a habit, I think these bad habits that they've built all year long are going to catch up to them. And like you said, they can't cover anybody. Trent McDuffie was an all-pro last year. He's getting killed by every receiver for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Raiders don't have any number one receiver. He's getting killed. The Panthers don't have any number one receivers. He was getting killed.
Yeah, and you let Snead go.
Exactly.
And that's
exactly.
what you get. But like I said, man, I just think about this. Philadelphia and Detroit. Those are the two best teams in the whole league to be in the same conference. They both in the NFC. Detroit has a game against Green Bay. They lose this game because I just don't think they're going to be able to sustain with all the injuries they have on defense. Offense, I think they'll be okay because they're physical. They can score points. But if it come down to Philadelphia and Detroit playing an NFC championship game and they have to play in Philly where you take the lines out of the element of a dome stadium and then you got pressure on golf, that offense becomes a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Because now you're playing in inclement weather. You're playing, on grass. So it's a whole different thing. So we're going to think about that down the line.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. But if it comes to that, Philadelphia, I see as the NFC champion.
Same.
And that's what I see.
Yeah, I like Philly as of right now coming out the NFC. I think they're a complete team, special teams, defense, offense. I think they're a complete team right now. Talking about the Lions, real quick before we get off here, who you got in that game tomorrow? They play the Packers at home. Right now, Detroit a 3-point favorite against Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. Who you liking that one?
I'm gonna go against the Lions. It's hard to go into Detroit and win right now.
It is.
But I think if it's a team that can go in and that can beat them, it's a Green Bay team, a young team, the youngest team in the whole league. And they like all that chatter and that hype and this, that, and other. But I think that's one team that can do it. And I think Green Bay is just good enough on defense to hold Detroit to under 28 points. And that's you talking about a lot, but 28 points. But they can rush the passer, they can defend on the back end, and I think they will get some stops against Detroit. And then I think, like I said, Detroit defense is the one that does it for me because I don't think now you're picking up guys off the street. Aaron Glenn has done a phenomenal job of getting these guys and rallying them together and still being able to win and play good defense despite that. But at some point, it's going to take a toll on you, and I think it's going to do it tomorrow night. And I'm taking Green Bay.
Yeah, I like Green Bay. I like Green Bay in this game, too. They haven't given up 20 points since that Detroit game 4 or 5 weeks ago when Detroit beat them 24-14. So the defense has been playing good. I think Green Bay's got a chance to be able to come out with the win tomorrow on Thursday Night Football. So, folks, we're out of time here today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. I want to thank Wayne for joining on here with us today. We'll be back in action tomorrow. Talk about some more college football. We'll preview the NFL weekend as well. So make sure you guys get ready for that. Stay locked in. We'll be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So we'll see you guys then. Thank everybody for watching and have a great evening.
Central Texas home for sports. It's Centex Sports Network and Infinity Sports. Catch all your in-depth sports analysis with the best. The hottest sports show in the evening is Centex